Yeah, hi, welcome to another session of Mock Interviews with Ankit Jain. So this is me, Ankit Jain. So I'm a technical architect in MNC. I'm 18X certified. I'm active in Salesforce events. And this is my LinkedIn URL. Feel free to connect with me. And to join, be updated on the future sessions or to connect with me, you can scan this code for the WhatsApp group. Then we'll reach out to you and confirm your identity. This is a normal procedure so that we avoid the spamming. Since in the past we have observed that there have been many spam attempts that have been made. So this is like a security measure. Please don't take it otherwise. And suppose if you want to have a one-to-one session with me, you can book it on TopMate as well. And there are some past sessions that we have recorded, some interview experiences as well. So those are available on YouTube. So this is the QR code for that. And this is the URL. So you can feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. To acknowledge the efforts of one of our candidates, like who recently took Accenture's interview. So they have shared us the feedback of what are questions they have asked. So based on that, we'll be covering those questions. So the first question that was asked around was if there's a user who is entering just the name and email through an LWC component, if we already have a user with those combination, the system should throw an error. So the way I look at it is like the panel wants you to know like how do we actually show the error. And so for that, we have a show toast method that is available. And suppose like when you're inserting this record, I'm assuming you would be having some backend method or you would be handling it through Apex. So where you get a long error message, so and it becomes not readable. So there's a reduce error method as well, reduce error method that is available from utils class of LWC recipe. So when the panel asks you around this thing, you can say like how to show error. So you can say like I will make it meaningful by using reduce errors method from the utility class provided in LWC recipes, and then I will use the show toast. And like normal best advice is like when you have the errors that are coming up in your child components, you allow them to throw and handle it in the parent component in the error callback itself. So that is the approach that I would take in. And you can talk about this. The panel just wants you to know like what is like to how to pictorially you show the error message. So you can talk about the toast message. That's quite simple. And reduce errors is like because the server error that is coming up is not user friendly. So it makes it look a little bit user friendly. So that is the advantage. So that's it on this. Any questions? If you have any questions, you can feel free to raise the hand. Then the next question that came up, yeah, this is like the example of the show toast, like how does it look? Suppose the next question is around like there is a list of records that have been displayed, and when you click on a record, we wanted that the detail page should open up. So in that, the panel just wants you to know about navigational mixing. So this is an interface that is available in LWC, so you will have to implement it. Uh, so you have to extend it. That's a base class. When you extend an LWC component with the lightning element, you can put a comma and add navigational mixing as well. And then you have the navigate method. So this is kind of syntax that it follows. Like you can mention the record detail page you want to navigate. And you have the record ID. So you will use that and mention the name of the object and the view action. So the main part is around the navigational mixing that the panel wants you to know. So you can just say about this and that should be fine. Any questions so far?
Hi, Ankit. Does on reactions attribute in the data table? Is that an answer to this question? How, or if it is, how does it contribute to the?
See, in data table, like how does it work is like you define it as a URL. Like you have to, meanwhile you're configuring the fields that you have to show, In that, you have to handle it. You have to make a proper JSON structure according to which it acts like a URL and it is like a label. And then you on click you handle means you handle it specifically as a URL. So when you click on that, automatically it opens up. So it's like you have to handle it in the attributes that you're passing in the Lightning data table. If it is like your normal table, like this on-click event I have talked about, is like if it's like a completely custom table that you have built in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, staying on this concept only, one question that I got in another interview is, let's say there's a data table displaying a bunch of contacts, and when you click on one row, it should open up in the console itself. The key part here being the console itself. I mean, the interviewer highlighted that part, that it should be displayed in the console itself. I mean, at that time, I didn't answer the question, but is model an answer to that, or is workspace API an answer to that? I mean, I'm not sure how to.
Workspace API will not be an answer because it is like open tab, sub tab, and all those are different things.
Right.
That and talking about models, like it you will have to, I think, go with the more customization. You won't be able to do that with the native data table. That's what I think. But suppose if you want to just click on that and you want to just open that record in the editable mode,
Right.
then you can do it. Like you have the attributes that you can set in the Lightning data table, which allows you to, like, suppose I am having a list of say contact one, C1, C2, C3. When I click on C1, I want like this entire C1 to be displayed in editable mode. And then when I click on save, it should save this functionality if I want. This is available within the standard Lightning data table itself. You will have to just use the UI API and configure the attributes of our Lightning data table. This is doable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Actually, Lightning data table is very, very important factor in the interview for the LWC because LWC is like Lightning table is like used everywhere. So you will need to know the capabilities, otherwise you will end up doing more customization.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
So the next question is very much simple, like which everybody has faced. Like how do you do the communication or pass the data? So child to parent custom events, parent to child at the rate API, like we pass it as an attribute. If it is unrelated, we go with LMS and PubSub. Uh, LMS stands for Lightning Message Service. PubSub is like an outdated scenario, like outdated technology, but which Salesforce is not going to support and don't do will not do much maintenance around it. Salesforce is clearly mentioned in its documentation, and that outline that Salesforce is given is like whether if suppose LMS is not available for your use case, then only go with PubSub. Otherwise, don't go with PubSub. Here, actually, one more interview question that comes up is around grandchild to grandparent. Like, how do you do the communication? So the answer for that is like you use the custom events, but you have to use you have to pass two attributes, bubble equal to true and compose equal to true, so that the communication can be passed on to the grandparent as well from the grandchild. Any questions on this one or any related question that you would want to discuss? I take it as a no, and let's move forward. So what is 101 SQL error and how to tackle it? See, 101 SQL, like one more important pointer, like in any interview, know at least two, three governor limits. Like 100 SQL you can do in synchronous, 150 DML you can do, 50,000 records only you would be able to query in your synchronous transaction, and 10,000 TMLs only you can do in a one transaction. So when we talk about like 101 error coming up, it's like it happens because in the synchronous transaction we have the limit of 100 SQL. So normal scenario it will happen due to recursion, like some code is being executed due to some recursion. You are getting 101 SQL. If it is not due to recursion and because of the logic, then what you can do is like you can move this to asynchronous. Asynchronous mode could be anything. Like you can go do it in future method, you can do it in batch class, whichever way you would want to process the data. And the reason you will go with the asynchronous mode is because there the limit is 200 SOQLs. So any questions related to that? If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So the next is like how to get user details in an LWC without Apex. Yeah, this is very important question. Like this question is asked in multiple companies as well. So what the panel wants you to know is like in like Apex you have like user info dot get user ID. So in LWC, how do I do that? So here, like you have to say, like we have like Salesforce user ID, like we import the ID and then we get the user ID. Then we can use the UI record API, or you can use GraphQL, or there are other tons of APIs that are available through which without Apex itself, you can get the data of the user. Simple would be UI record API, that's directly get record and it's done. Please interrupt me if you have any questions, okay? The next question.
Ankit, I have a question. Is there any drawback to GraphQL?
There are some things which are in like few API, few like when I did some POC, there were a few say objects which were not supported in the GraphQL as of now. Like I think list view I think was not supported, not 100% I'm able to recall, but there are few things which are not supported by GraphQL right now. And I think with @ var you can't use that. You have to do an imperative call only, I guess, or somewhere around, but there are some drawbacks of GraphQL. But it gives you flexibility, like you can control like what format you want to actually return the data. That is a very unique thing.
By format, you mean the
JSON
columns?
structure, JSON structure. It divides the fields as different nodes, and then you can format it like you want first the ID, it means name, then you have want other attributes. So something like that, you can control it. That's the best part. So are you clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go to the next question. Uh, Can you do a DML when we use at the rate way cacheable equal to true? No, we can't do that. It becomes the completely read only because we are storing this thing in cache. So that's why you can't do it. Next is how do you may do an apex callout? Callout is basically simple. You need the endpoint to pass like what type of request it is, like it is a post, it is a get, then some header attributes and the body, and just http.send. If suppose panel asks you to write a code, you can write this code. Otherwise, you can just say like you will create the instead of request, pass the endpoint method type and body, and just use http.send, http request.send, because H is actually, yeah, HTTP request only. I forgot to add that line, but it is HTTP request instance only. But this is how you do it. I think there's not much to ask in that. So the next question is around like what actions can you do in the batch class? See, in batch class, we can do multiple things. How many records can you perform? Or I think it would be process in the batch class. So you can process up to 50 million records. Like 50 million records you can return, and then I suppose you want to just already have the data with you, then you can process only 50,000 records, like you are using a table, and then based on batches, it would process it as you want. But the standard limitations that we have on the synchronous epics will still be valid here. What I mean here is like in the execute method, if suppose you are trying to do a DML which is having more than 10,000 records, it will throw you an error in the batch class as well. Suppose you're doing SQL inside a execute method and it is returning you more records, it will still throw you error. So the only thing I would say, like when they talk about how many records you can process, it's like they want to know like how many records that you can process. So it is like 50 million records. You have to consider the higher limit that you are fetching the data from the database. So 50 million records you can retrieve and then process it accordingly. I hope that is clear. The question is actually not phrased right, but the panel might want to confuse you. So that's why they might use such techniques. So be very much clear. Like 50 million records is the golden number when you talk about batch class. Any questions so far? Please let me know if there's any question. So the next question is, if I want to do an update in the record and I have to send that data to external system, how do I do it? So here they're talking about like sending data to external system. It's actually they're asking about the callouts. So in batch class, you can always implement like database.allow callouts and then send the data. Do so. One thing you have to say very clearly is like by default, you can't do callouts. To make it enable, you actually implement this interface. So the next question is what is a trigger recursion? Recursion is like it is calling itself. So sometimes the scenario comes in like you are modifying a object, and based on modification of that object, another object gets modified. And on the second object, like suppose on account I made some modification, which is updating all the related contacts. On contact, I have another trigger which is updating a field on account. So there's a possibility of a recursion here. So one object is triggering another object, another object is again no, calling the parent object's triggers. So that causes recursion. So that is it. Then the question comes around like, how do you tackle this problem? So there are three, four solutions to that. First is very basic, like a Boolean variable. And the second is around like using a set of IDs and checking like which IDs have been processed or in the past. Third is around the map, like ID comma object, you store it and then do the check. Fourth band, the best way is like use come to the comparison against trigger.old. And if the condition satisfies and you follow the best practices of trigger framework, that way you reduce the chances of recursion. Any questions on this recursion? Because recursion is a very important topic.
No, Ankit.
Okay. Next is was a tricky question when I first saw it. How do I ensure like the order of execution in flows is maintained? Like there are three before save record triggered flows. How do I control the sequence? So what I can do is like if I have such a scenario, I can do a checks. Like if first record triggered flow I have, in that I will be setting a value like and immediately the commit it won't do the commit. So I will set a variable like say processed first flow. I will check that or I will have a picklist value. And in the second before flow, I will do a check like if the dollar record is having this attribute, then processes. And then again set the second attribute value. Like that, I have to set the entry criteria and then what would happen is like at a given time only one before save record triggered flow would get executed, and as soon as the second would it would beat the means it would finish the execution, it would trigger the second one because it satisfied the condition. So that way I think you will be able to control the sequence. As per the best practices, you should have only one before flow and one after flow on a given object.
I'm not sure about this, Ankit, but I have seen somewhere. I think while saving the flow, I think we can also control the order there. 1 to 2000. I think we can give some number and we can control there as well.
Okay, I will do some research around it.
Yeah, actually, while saving the flow, we have a option called order there.
Okay, mhm.
There for 1 to 2000 flows, we can check. We can control order from there as well.
Okay, let me just do some research around it. The next thing is around why can't we use wire method in an LWC? So we can use wire everywhere, wherever we want. We can't do a DML and also on any user triggered option operation. Like suppose and when you click on a button, that time I can't use at the rate wire because at the rate wire it's like LWC means ASUS controls it by itself. I don't have any say in that. So only if a DML is needed in and if there's a user triggered option like we want to do call a method or do some updates or get a database with user action, then you can't use at the rate wire. The next thing is around like if there's a 10 opportunity records being displayed and user is selecting any n number of records and clicking on delete, then the selected records get deleted from the database, but they're still visible in the UI. How do I rectify this? This actually is a very valid scenario. They actually want to know, tell you that sometimes like when we get this data 10 records, we actually use at the rate fire or cacheable equal to true and or directly fetch the data once. And in the backend, like due to processing, the data might get outdated. How to avoid this scenario? So here you will have to talk about the refresh apex method that is available and notify record update available. These two methods. So what these two methods does is like whenever update happens, then you call this method. So it will see like if this data is, it will fetch the data again from the database. It would forcefully do that. Or you will have to go for streaming API and do this. But I think the answers for this should be related to the refresh apex and notify record update available. These two are the methods through which you can update the cache, and then it would to get you the right set of data, and on the table you see the right set of information. The any question on this? This is a advanced concept. This would be best explained. Like I think I would need a separate session to talk about this functionality. But these are the method names. Any questions so far? So the next question is around HTTP post and HTTP patch. See, patch is for update and post is for normally creating a record. So when we want to create a record, we don't pass ID because that's what would be generated automatically in the backend. And patch is like update. So for doing update, we always need a ID. So that is a very basic difference that I pointed out. Next is how do you do conditional rendering? So you can use LWC if. That is very basic, and you all have if else as well in LWC. So this is the syntax which I pointed out. So the next is around string interpolation. In string interpolation, the name is actually a bit complex, but the logic is very simple. Basically, what you want to do in string interpolation is like you want to pass a dynamic expression in the string itself, in the in between. Like here, this is like a regular string only. And here, this is a dynamic attribute that would be coming up. So when I print this one, it would fetch like the dynamically what is the variable name here or the value. So this is around the string interpolation. So these were the questions that were shared in.
Uh,
Now,
I have a doubt. What's the difference between using a single dollar and a double dollar sign? I mean, I haven't seen double dollar until now.
it's not actually double dollar. It's like
Oh,
the amount. It's amount. Like, let me just show you again.
oh, right, right. Okay, got it. Yeah. So it's the product prices. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the price. Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry.
not a problem. Let me just see like if I have a org open, and then what we can do is we can try to see any org like where we get the option of before flow, like which we just saw. Let me just share my screen. Let me just go over that. Just mention it as, I mean, this is say account and fast field updates. Okay. Here, yeah, here we have the option like I would like to make a correction on trigger
Yeah.
order. Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. I just seen it a little earlier.
Yeah. I will just update in the deck as well so that our audience is not misguided. Hmm. Yeah, I think these are the questions as of now. Like apart from this, if you have any other questions or would like to, we have 10 minutes more. So you would want to point out any other question, you can feel free to ask.
When we migrate the workflows to flows, so
Okay.
is there any changes on order of execution?
Uh, Actually, what I would say is like yes. Lightning flow, the order is it starts even before the trigger itself. Like the before flow gets called first, and then the before trigger, and the workflow rule gets executed at the very means quite later in the stage of order of execution. So there is a change that you would observe. So whenever you do this migration, my suggestion is like you check the entire functionality end to end because there is a change in order of execution for this.
Yeah, workflows will execute after the action.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Ankit, I have one more question here. Actually,
Yeah.
recently I got one scenario where what happens, I have a field an opportunity.
You have a
Uh,
failed opportunity? Oh,
sorry, I
okay.
have sorry, I have a field on opportunity.
Okay,
Okay.
field. Okay. Yeah.
For example, amount. There is a validation rule on particular field amount. If it is 500 more than 500, I will get validation rule. It will get fire. I mean, validation will fire. Amount is greater than 500.
Okay.
And I have a workflow field update also on the particular field.
You will get the validation rule gets executed in the first place. So you will have to uh,
Wait, no. Actually, my question is, I know order of execution validation rule will fire firstly, and workflow will later. But the thing is, will validation rule will fire again after workflow, after execution of workflow?
yes, you're doing a field update, right?
Yes.
So it would get called again.
Yeah, but see, did you remember we shared one screenshot in our group? There it mentioned a validation rule will not fire after field update. I am little confused. I'm not sure about.
There are actually some scenarios specifically where the actually it depends on object to object, and also it depends like when we do a field update, it does fire, as per my understanding. We can check the order of execution in that. What I have seen is like, yes, it does fire.
Actually, I answered it will save the record because according to our document which we are following, validation rule will not fire after workflow update there.
Which document are you considering trigger exceptions here? Let's see, trigger transaction articles. Mm, mm, Options are total trigger. Here it says like it does execute. Yes, for the official document, it says like it would get fire. And logically, it does make sense to me as well.
I mean, field update. I mean, again, it will fire validation after field update.
Yeah, when you're doing a field update on the particular object, that calls the trigger. I will say I will just also confirm with you because I think it should be called. Here it is there and yeah, actually this actually checkbox actually takes care of that. If after the update is done on the original object, then again it would you want to reevaluate and see if it matches the condition. No, it's different. I don't see anything like mentioned here around this, what you're saying in. If you have observed this one, I think we'll have to explore more on the official documentation and see like what's the right answer.
Okay. Actually, I got multiple answers on this. Still, I don't.
Yeah, I would suggest like don't try in your org itself. That will be the best answer.
Yeah. I will do it.
Ankit, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if I got a question in another interview that tell me about reusable LWCs. So how can I answer this other than saying slots? Is there any answer to that other than slots?
Reusable LWC.
Yeah.
I would say you can talk about the model, like recently Salesforce introduced model components. So that is quite reusable.
Right. Okay. I'd have to look into this. It's the first time I'm hearing.
Yeah, it is recently introduced only.
Okay. Okay.
Then other reusable components, you can say like there are few that have been made reusable and is available in the LWC recipes itself. And then other than that, like we'll have to take care, like to make a component reusable, we can define like the aura attributes which are take passed and it should dynamically behave. So it's up to us, like we can make a component reusable by our own means, like the while we are developing it. But few out of the box that are available is around your list view component you can talk about. Like our lightning data table. Lightning data table is actually a generic component only. You are passing in just the few attributes and it gets rendered and does what you want, right?
Yeah.
It's actually someone has built a novel LWC like any developer like us, and it's like just Salesforce has published that, and it's available out of the box. Like you can just use those tags and pass the attributes, and it works.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned LWC recipes. Could you repeat that line again?
Yeah, I will show that LWC recipes. Like it's like a Salesforce repository that which
Yeah.
Salesforce has created in.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it the view source, view source LWC that you're talking about inside the LWC recipes,
Mm,
which is getting, I mean, that gets reused everywhere. When
no, 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 no. I am talking about which one you're talking. I am talking about Lightning data table and the other model. Like Lightning model is a component. Yeah, this one I'm talking about. It's a standard component.
right, yeah, yeah. So, okay, okay, okay.
And this is the LWC recipe. Like here, there are various components which have been mentioned. So you can explore those. Under utils folder, it's mentioned. Yeah, like in this, like they're defined few other reusable methods like reduce errors and other methods are also there in. Okay, only just the reduce error is there. So that's it, I guess. Hope you were an hope you got the value that you were looking for, and I was able to contribute to whatever your expectation was. And any feedback that you have for me would be more than welcome.
Ankit, sorry, I have one last question. Do you know by chance like what may